Have you figured out your niche? Are you helping adding value to other people's lives? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Munira's Musings with your host, co-author of Conversations with Top Real Estate Investors Volume 3, Munira Zahabi.
Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira for Munira's Musings. Welcome to another episode. My guest today is Corey. Welcome to my show. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you. And Corey is a TEDx speaker, and he's going to share a few tips and tricks and how he got to his niche. But before we do that, we're going to talk about who I am and what I do. I am Munira Zahabi. I'm the niche navigator, and I help you align your skills to navigate to the passion that you want to get to. Because this show is about all those people who are living their dream, like Corey just said. So we want to know how they got to their dream and why they do what they do. This is why Munira's Musings was born, because find a few tips and tricks that can help all of those people watching. So thank you, Corey. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you calling us from today?
So a bit about myself, and I won't go back to what hospital I was born in, but I will say I grew up in a small town, was raised by a single mother, and I often look back to that as a reason that I do what I do and sort of follow the path I did. But in terms of who I am, I really love speaking for audiences where I can perhaps make a difference in their life, and then B, helping other people do the exact same thing. And so that's sort of what I'm passionate about, and where I'm actually talking with you today from. And I just mentioned that at any given time when somebody asks me where I'm based or where I'm at, I always say the hotel that I'm at the night before. But I'm actually I'm home right now. So I'm home for another 3 or 4 days. And home for me is in Prince Edward Island in the Far East Coast in Canada.
Wonderful. Well, welcome home, because I know it's very hard to track you down. You're always traveling. So you said you like talking. How did you figure that out?
So the truth is, I didn't think I did like speaking, talking. I didn't think it was for me. I knew I was a social person in general, but I was social in a group of friends or social one-on-one. I did like being sort of the entertainer if I was hanging out with people, but I didn't know that I liked speaking in front of people, if that makes sense. So as soon as you put the platform to me, the mic, the stage, what have you, that part I didn't think I liked. And in fact, I was that guy that had that fear. When you hear this statistic that the number one fear above speaking is death, rather. I was that guy that understood that. I understood that being on a stage felt like death to me. So it's kind of ironic considering what I do today, but I actually wasn't born that way. And that's how I know you can learn this and you can actually overcome that fear, and not only overcome it, but go to the next level. How I discovered it is I was tricked onto a stand-up comedy stage one night, and I bombed horribly on that stage. Like, I had a horrible show and I didn't do good at all, but I survived. And by surviving, that was enough to tell me that I could do it again. And I went back week after week, and slowly but surely I started discovering I had at least a like for it. And then I discovered this world of professional speaking and found that I had a love for it. Comedy gave me a lot of what I liked, but there were things I didn't necessarily love about comedy. The speaking world gave me almost all of what I loved and not much of what I didn't. So
whoever tricked you made your life a little simpler, right? So what do you speak about?
It varies, but my signature talk, I'll say first because it's the most common, is I've spent the last better part of 10 plus years interviewing what I call enlightened superachievers. To the tune now of over 5,000 one-on-one interviews. And so I became obsessed clearly by interviewing people. And so my signature talk now is a talk I call The Timeless Secrets of Influential Leaders. So the best point of reference is, if you are familiar, listener, viewer, with Napoleon Hill's work, Think and Grow Rich. I've been called on media a lot of times the modern day Napoleon Hill, because I became so obsessed with interviewing people. And so what I do in my talks is I share those secret habits and traits that I've discovered that the highest of achievers share, so that hopefully other people can join them. I can speak to anybody in that one, because I think we all want to know how to master what the influencers do, even if it's just for the betterment of our personal life. On that, I've continued to talk since my early days about customer experiences. So how you can create world-class customer experiences, and then also communication. So whether that's how to deliver world-class presentations, how to read and adjust to the 4 personality types we encounter each day. Those are more of my business talks.
How did you find speaking gigs? That's a big question today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that was the part that was harder than I thought, if I'm being full disclosure. I went into it thinking the whole, if you build it, they will come mentality was going to work for me. I felt that I had a sales career over the course of 10 years. I didn't start strong, but I finished strong in that sales career. I mean, I spent probably 7 of the 10 years at the higher level. And so I just assumed the next step for me was just going to be a breeze. And that clients that I'd worked with in that sales role were going to actually just automatically send business my way and say, we want to bring you in. And so what I will tell you is that it was a lot harder than I thought to get those early bookings. If I look back now and say, what were the things that moved the needle? Because I think that's what's going to serve people the best. One of those things was early on, I started handing out an evaluation form. And on that evaluation form, and I'll say early on, after about 2 years, I recognized that if you want to find paying clients, you need to be in front of them. So you need to be speaking in front of them. That's where they're going to find you. That's what they've proven is that people hire speakers. If you look at the percentages, word of mouth is probably the strongest to the second strongest, but right up there with it is seeing the speaker live. So when you see a speaker live, there's a much better chance you're going to hire them than if somebody else says you should book the speaker. That's why people ask to see videos. And so what I recognized at some point, maybe 2 or 3 years in, is that I needed to be in front of these people who are thinking of hiring me. So then I had to analyze, how can I get in front of them? So what I did was I started doing no fee talks. I don't say the word free because I think it devalues you. So no fee talks. I started doing them for groups that had business owners that would attend their event. So let's say it could be 100 business owners in the room, all different businesses represented. So I would do no fee talks for those groups, let's say an association with businesses in it, and then hand out an evaluation form. And on that evaluation form, one of the key questions was, do you know of others who could hire me for a similar talk? And if so, can we follow up with you? So that one question on the evaluation form was a game changer for me. And here's a tip out of that, by the way. If you're going to bring an evaluation form, don't let them send it in digitally. They'll say, I want to send it in later. No, you'll get less than 5%. They need to fill it out on the spot, pen to paper. But having said that, on that evaluation form, another game changer is I asked questions like, can we add you to our newsletter? So all of a sudden I was building my newsletter with that. I asked about testimonials. So now all of a sudden I was having testimonials from early on. Then I also got somebody there to film some videos. So I'd have video for my talks. So that's one example, one little kind of secret, if you will, that made all the difference in the world for me as a speaker early on. Now,
this is pretty interesting to me as well. So I'm sure people who are listening are interested. You said you would go into this for the no fee talks and you find these business people in a meeting. What did you talk about? Was this your signature talk that you had massaged and created already, or were you in the works?
So I didn't even really have a signature talk at the time. So my common talks at the time, my biggest one, I had just finished a 10-year sales career. And so my first early talks were mostly around sales training. So whether it was a keynote about maybe the 3 secret tips that I learned as a top-level salesperson, or it could be a training session on sales. So it could be a little bit more sleeves rolled up. So sales was really the big thing I talked about. And then I slowly but surely started adding customer service into the mix.
Okay.
Speak on what you know. And that's what I knew at the time. And I was passionate about it. And it served me really well for the things I just mentioned, because at the college, I was teaching a business sales course. So the clients that wanted to bring me in would obviously want me to come in and talk about sales. And then when I was working with those associations, if I'm speaking on sales, a lot of those companies had a sales staff. So it did actually serve me really well, but it's not what I'm passionate about anymore. That's the best.
When you started interviewing people, was that just out of the gist, or did you have a plan, or how many do you still do them? And all these questions.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And so there's a couple of answers to that, because on one hand, how I started it actually, which was a unique thing altogether as well, is when I was 18 years old, I went through an entrepreneurial course. And the result of the course is we launched a business newspaper. There's a whole story behind that. But I launched a newspaper that would be like Success Magazine, but in a newspaper form in a small little area, like a small little community. So what I was doing is I was actually interviewing and profiling the entrepreneurs that were running those businesses. And so I did that for a little less than a year. And so I would say I probably did about 100 interviews. And then I completely stopped that. Like my whole career took a different path. I went to work for a Fortune 500 company, moved across the country. Everything changed. But then in about 2007, I was back full time. I was running my own business again. I was speaking full time. And I realized that I'd never closed the door properly on that first paper. So I launched a new version of it. So then for the next 5 years, so until 2012, I believe, I ran it monthly. And to run that paper, I needed to, in some months, interview 80 people. So all of a sudden, the interviews just kept piling up. And that's when I realized I became obsessed with it. And I have a book series, I thought I might be close enough to grab it, that I put out years ago called Conversations With. And there were 5 books in the series, and each one profiled about 100 leaders. So I did roughly 500 interviews just for that book series. And then what happened was, in about 2012, I recognized that I had hit a ceiling. I couldn't do much more with the newspaper because it was in a small community and it was a printed newspaper. And even though that community still does print, most of the world is not print anymore. And so I recognized the writing was on the wall and I wanted to go into a different format. So I moved over to online radio. And what I'll say is I haven't moved away since. So
I'm not that crazy, right?
I don't blame you. I don't think many people are.
No, because and this is what I tell people, is like I have a curious nature. And by interviewing you, I can ask questions that I otherwise would not ask you, right? So
true.
This makes it official.
Absolutely. There's such a story there toward why I kept doing interviews and how it served me so well, meaning that you get to access people that you would never normally get to access. You get to ask them questions you would never normally get to ask them. I mean, when I look at some of the people we've had on the show, like a Jack Canfield, who, Chicken Soup for the Soul, a co-creator, who charges, I don't know now, I'm just going to say thousands upon thousands per talk for 45 minutes. And then I get access to him for over an hour. I can ask him whatever I want. Whereas if I went to a talk to see him, even if I was the meeting planner and paid to bring him in, I still can't ask him an hour's worth of questions. It's insane to think with these interviews, how many people we can reach and the insight we can get from them. And they become our mentors, whether they know it or not.
So my hope is to get Steve Harvey on my interview show.
Yes.
You're just my stepping stone to that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and he's, the one thing it took me a long time to realize is you hear that 6 degrees of separation. We're really less degrees away from the people we want to reach than we think we are. I have to add this in is because a lot of people think that I think people don't realize how unique we are and how much of a gift we have in the world and how, especially now with the global world, how much easier it is to take these big steps than it used to be. And so when I say that, for me to openly say, I'm sure I'm 1 degree away from Steve Harvey, I would have never dreamed 10 years ago of saying that. My head would be just like, there's no way I could ever be even 5 degrees away. And now I can confidently say it, not from an ego perspective, because that word doesn't even enter my sphere in this world. But it's really true. And the thing is that now I'm willing to embrace that. Like I do truly believe that if you don't ask, the answer is always no. But if you do ask, the answer probably is likely maybe. And you might get closer to a yes than you think. For example, I'll give you an example. I could probably, and I'm talking me now, I'm talking the person listening. You could probably jump on to, let's say, Jay Shetty, who's a really big name now, or Gary Vaynerchuk, or whoever you want. You could probably jump onto their Twitter and grab one of their newest books and snapshot a picture of their book. I'm about to do this challenge again. I did it a long time ago. Snapshot quotes from their book, post them on Twitter, and do a 10-day challenge. And every day say, I love this quote from Gary V. Here's how it speaks to me. And I bet you after 10 days, Gary V is going to acknowledge you if you do that for 10 days. So my point is, you're probably only 1 degree away from Gary V. But what I'm getting at is don't just follow them and watch what they do. And don't just comment because they're not going to notice that. I mean, they have how many people commenting on every post? What I'm saying is serve them. Now, you have to believe in what they believe. And you buy their book, don't share stuff you don't agree with. But if you're aligned with them and you're a fan of them, and you actually share, let's say, a snapshot from their work and keep doing that, how are they not going to eventually go, this person's sharing my stuff with no hidden agenda? I need to at least single them out or say, hey, thanks for sharing.
You know, it's funny because I'd never heard of Gary Vee until a few weeks ago when Tony Robbins showed up here in United Center. I loved his talk because he's raw.
Oh,
You know,
exactly right.
he's like spending money on things you don't need and use the money on growing yourself. Because when you start doing a mastermind, when you're doing something and you ask people for money and they'll say, I have to ask my husband, or I don't have the money right now, but don't look in your closet, sell a few things. I am so happy you're on my show. Oh, I'm going to meet Steve Harvey through you.
well, we're both going to try to meet him together.
Well, we will. Yes, thank you so much. Any last words for my viewers?
No, I mean, I know you talk about niches on the show, or niches, depending on how a person pronounced it. I never assume, because I know different people say niche or niche.
Yes.
What I will say is it took me a lot. This is like maybe a share for somebody else that might listen to the show that may be thinking, should I niche or niche? Or and I think people like saying niches because they say the niches are in the riches are in the niches. But for people that are saying should I or should I not, especially in relation to speaking, you know, whether your topic is this the only talk I share, I'll say there's no right or wrong answer, in the sense that I can list you 10 speakers that are crushing it. For example, Tony Robbins, who are he's niched, but he's not niched in the way that, say, Seth Godin is. You know, so Seth Godin is the passive marketing guy. Tony Robbins is like the success guru. But success and peak performance is not really a niche. I mean, it's really wide open. But both of those guys are doing okay. And so my point is, you can do either or. But I will tell you this. For me, the best things, and it's the hardest thing in the world for me to niche, because I'm a type A personality who's multi-passionate. But for me, once I niched, for example, in helping people secure their TEDx talk, that was a game changer for me. Because what happened, which didn't happen, I always got referrals from word of mouth, but it was like, Corey's a speaker, you should bring him in to speak. But that makes it hard for somebody to go, but what am I going to bring that guy in to speak about? And maybe going, well, that's great, but we need somebody to come in and talk about customer experiences, and we don't even know if he speaks on that. But once I started helping people land their TEDx talk, it's so much easier for people to say, hey, Corey's your guy if you want to land a TEDx talk. And so that's my thing about niches for today, is that you don't have to, but what I will say is that it's a lot easier for people to have clarity about how they can refer you if you are niched.
There you go. See, niche down, because the money and everything, the success comes from niches to riches. I say that. It's not the other way around. It's niches to riches, because that niche that you've been harboring is going to take you to the path that you want to go, and you still don't know which path it is. That's why you use a compass and get there. That's Absolutely. My compass.
I love it. Yeah, that's awesome. Did you also, if you're okay with it, one other last thing I should do is I always like to give a gift away when I'm on a show. People, you know, are spending their time. They have choices, so they're spending their time. So I like to reward them for actually taking action and spending their time. So especially when we've been talking about speaking, if people want more insights and sort of tricks of the trade around the speaking business, or even TEDx, if you go to thebookofpublicspeaking.com, so it's pretty easy to remember, thebookofpublicspeaking.com. You can actually grab a copy of my book called The Book of Public Speaking, no surprise. And it's actually a real deal book. I think it's 150 or 180 pages, so we're not talking like a little 5-page ebook. But yeah, people can go and grab that if they want. And there's a lot of interviews in it with highly successful speakers. So one of the cool things is it's not a book where you have to read cover to cover and spend all your time. You can just read one interview at a time. So I'd like to give that away for free if I can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. When we're done, we'll put the link back down so that people can grab it. Thank you so much, Corey.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's such a wonderful experience to talk to you, because, you know, now you've opened up this thing. I have family members who keep asking me, why do you keep talking to people? Well, they have something that I'm looking for. I don't know. It's going to help me someday. Who knows, right?
Absolutely. Don't ever stop, because what I can tell you is a lot of people start shows like podcasts, let's say, and then give up because they're not seeing the immediate results. But what I can tell you is after 5,000 interviews, so I have a lot of experience with this, the intangible benefits start coming after you do the work. And eventually you're going, I never would have thought that would have happened because of me launching my show or doing these interviews. So you just never know where it's going to lead. But I can tell you, I haven't ever seen it lead to bad. So you're going in the right path. I will say as well, by having 200 shows, you're probably ahead of 90% of the podcasters in the world. Awesome stuff.
Thank you so much. For those of you watching, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And keep speaking because you never know who you're going to meet. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to
Thank
this
you.
episode of Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi. If you enjoyed our show, please share and subscribe to this channel. And for more content, please join our Facebook group,